Welcome to Michigan in Focus, powered by thecentersquare.com. This episode features a piece by Center Square, Michigan reporter Scott McClellan, headlined, quote, "Michigan lawmakers to propose FOIA reform this year," end quote. Here's the story. Some Republicans and Democrats agree Michigan's Freedom of Information Act should be reformed and will propose legislation later this year. Senator Jeremy Moss, a Southfield Democrat, called FOIA reform a good government issue. A 2015 report gave Michigan an F grade for government transparency and accountability. Michigan is one of 2 states that exempts the governor or legislature from FOIA, although local governments such as police and fire departments are subject to the accountability measure. Moss said in a phone interview, quote, "FOIA is journalists' lifeblood to get information out of government, to make sure the public knows fully what's going on. It's stunning how far behind Michigan is," end quote. Enacting FOIA reform will be institution-changing, said Moss, who added, "will hopefully help root out long-standing corruption in Michigan politics." Moss said, quote, "If you want to request something from the Michigan legislature, there's no one to even request it from. Our staff doesn't provide this information because they are untrained to go into our records and search it," end quote. Other state governments have FOIA coordinators, processes, systems, record retention laws, and more in place. House Oversight and Ethics Committee Chair Erin Byrnes, a Dearborn Democrat, said she was subject to FOIA during her 5 years on the Dearborn City Council. Byrnes said in a phone interview, quote, "For me, being at the state level and not having that transparency feels uncomfortable, to be honest. To me, it feels natural for that to be in place," end quote. Byrnes hopes to propose the FOIA reform as soon as humanly possible. In previous years, FOIA reform would pass the Republican-controlled House but not the Republican-controlled Senate. In 2023, voters chose a Democrat political trifecta for the first time in 40 years that has enacted so far tax reform, gun safety, civil rights, and education changes. Democrats are still working on bill language. Quote, "This is something that we certainly have to be very thoughtful and meticulous about because we are building a system from the ground up," end quote. Moss said, adding stakeholders include the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, the American Civil Liberties Union, and Governor Gretchen Whitmer's office. Moss is working with Senator Ed McBroom, a Waseda Township Republican, among other stakeholders. Representative Tom Kunz, a Republican from Clare, vice chair of the House Ethics and Oversight Committee, said it's morally necessary to reform FOIA. Quote, "A government should be small, responsive, and transparent, and we are none of those things," end quote, Kunz said in a phone interview. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. This podcast was made with the assistance of AI technology. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.